Hi, it's Katrina. Forget the dusty textbooks because today history is leaping off the page. We are diving headfirst into the thrilling discovery of what archaeologists believe could be King Arthur's long-lost castle. But that's just the beginning of our adventure. Prepare to journey to lost worlds and forgotten cities, from the metropolis of alien kings hidden in the jungle to the search for the real Garden of Eden. Let's go. King Arthur's castle? Was this the real Camelot? Archaeologists have just discovered the remains of a Dark Age royal palace in Cornwall, England. Let loose the fog, crank up the dramatic medieval flute music, and roll out the ancient red carpet. This cliffside stronghold, with its echoes of legend and whispers of kings, could have belonged to the one and only King Arthur. Or at least where the mythical king was conceived. Since medieval times, Tintagel has been strongly associated with the legend of King Arthur, and archaeologists searching for the man beyond the myth have found a palace fortress on the cliffs dating back to the Dark Ages, perfect for a 5th or 6th century king. The Tintagel castle remains are surrounded by crashing waves, rolling hills, and mist so thick on some days that you can't see your hand in front of your face. According to the 12th century chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth, the J.R.R. Tolkien of medieval Wales, King Arthur was conceived at Tintagel as a result of an illicit union between King Uther Pendragon and Igraine, the wife of Duke Gorloy of Cornwall. In the legend, Merlin himself helped disguise King Uther so he could be with Igraine and they could fulfill the destiny of uniting Britain under one ruler. You can read the tale for yourself in Geoffrey's book, Historia Regum Britanniae. It was one of the most important books written after the fall of Rome. Or, if you want the legend told slightly differently, be sure to read The Mists of Avalon, one of my favorites. Researchers found walls over 3 feet thick with flagstone floors and other buildings that prove this was an entire castle compound. And the people who lived here lived well, even if they were in the Dark Ages at the ends of the earth. There are fragments of pottery and glass everywhere. Archaeologists found bowls and plates from Western Turkey and North Africa, wine and olive oil from Greece, glass cups from France. The only thing missing from this place was a moat and a dragon. So is this proof that the legends might be real? Could this have been the birthplace of King Arthur? Maybe. It's the first time in Britain that structures like this have been found from the very heart of the Dark Ages, right when Arthur was supposedly wielding his legendary sword Excalibur. Tintagel was thought to be abandoned during the time Geoffrey claimed Arthur was conceived there, but archaeologists have found all these signs of life, meaning Arthur could have absolutely been born here right when Geoffrey said he was. So, what happened to this place? Why was it abandoned just a few centuries later, and everyone left all their plates and glass cups behind? Scientists haven't found any evidence of destruction, so it's doubtful that Tintagel was conquered. It might have been hit by a plague, forcing everyone to leave. The dig by the Cornwall Archaeological Unit may not have unearthed Arthur's sword, but it definitely carved out a huge chunk of context. Someone ruled over a castle fortress in the birthplace of King Arthur, where legend says it happened around 1500 years ago. It's not quite Camelot since Arthur was just a baby, but it could be more proof that the legend may be more based in truth than you thought. The lost city of Palenque. Is this ancient Maya king piloting a spacecraft? Over the years, a carving in the abandoned Maya city of Palenque has fueled many ancient alien theories. But why? What is it about this place that continues to baffle and intrigue us? The ancient city of Palenque was once a bustling Maya metropolis, but now it looks like something out of Indiana Jones' The Existential Crisis. Birds squawk, monkeys yell out unsolicited opinions, and the morning mist wraps around the stone ruins just like it used to hundreds of years ago. Set on a lush hillside in Chiapas State, Palenque isn't just a pretty abandoned city. It's a full-on flex of ancient engineering. There's a palace complex with arched hallways, stucco frescoes, saunas, aqueducts, and even a granite toilet with plumbing. While we always tend to think of plumbing as a very modern invention, the Maya already had it in the 600s. One of the most famous places in Palenque is the Temple of the Inscriptions, where Mayans wrote down 180 years of history and rulers carved directly into the walls. If only every civilization had done that. Here you go, records carved right into the stone. That's archaeologist heaven right there. The most famous name on the list of rulers is Kiinich Janab Pakal, crowned at age 12. This guy was ruling kingdoms at the same age most people are watching SpongeBob, I think. I don't know what kids watch anymore. He ruled from 615 to 683 AD. That's 70 years of ruling back in the day when the average life expectancy was just 30 years old. He was extremely savvy, intelligent, and oversaw a golden age of construction, glory, and the surprisingly advanced plumbing I told you about. His palace was a functional wonder, built so well that researchers are still impressed to this day. How did he do it? The Temple of the Inscriptions is Pakal's final resting place, and he designed it himself. Ruling for that long, he had time to prepare. It was an 8-level funerary pyramid with the entrance at the very top and his crypt about 82 feet down inside the pyramid. His sarcophagus was massive, weighing 20 tons and with a 5-ton slab on top, covered in carvings and engravings. While the lost city was rediscovered in the late 1700s, it wasn't until the 1950s that research here really took off. Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luillier was excavating and cataloging the temple when he uncovered a floor panel hiding a secret staircase filled with rubble. It took 4 years of digging, but he was persistent. He squeezed into the burial chamber deep inside the pyramid when he found the untouched tomb of an ancient king. It was an incredible discovery, the American equivalent to opening King Tut's tomb. Pakal had been buried with several men and women who had been sacrificed to accompany him to the afterlife, along with incredible jewelry, figurines, and sculptures, and a jade funerary mask unlike any other found in the world. But the reason Pakal became so famous in recent times is not for his engineering or artwork or leadership skills. It's because of the carving found on the lid of his sarcophagus that some have interpreted as the great ruler being in an ancient spaceship. His architecture, art, and knowledge was advanced technology that he must have received from the stars or from space or aliens. Was Pakal piloting a rocket? This image is used all the time in Ancient Aliens. Ancient Alien fans insist that Pakal's tomb proves the Maya had help from the stars when it came to building their cities and structuring their civilization. But it turns out people haven't been looking at it right. We always see the image sideways, the king sitting looking forward. But you're supposed to look at it vertically. If you rotate it, the king is actually laying on his back, looking upward. He is reaching for something, the tree of life. The lid is full of ancient symbolism representing gods and sacrifice and the Maya underworld. It's not Pakal flying away to space, it's showing him underground, demonstrating that he lived a full life. But most of us don't understand all the symbolism because we keep seeing the spaceship. Either way you slice it, Palenque holds some of the most tantalizing secrets of the Maya civilization. Do those secrets include their king blasting off to alien worlds? I don't think so, but I'll leave that for you to decide. And Palenque is definitely on my bucket list. How about you? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Paulette Bach and Louis Zamora for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. The Peru-Egypt Connection. You know that moment when you're looking at two different things, like Nicolas Cage standing next to a wax figure of Nicolas Cage, and you start wondering, are they the same? That's kind of what happens when you compare Peru's Coricancha Temple and Egypt's Valley Temple of Khafre. They're nearly 6,500 miles apart, separated by oceans, cultures, and an entire hemisphere. But they look like two chapters from the same book. Cut from the same cloth, you might say. I'll start this strange journey in Cusco, Peru, with the glorious Coricancha, or Coricancha with a Q and a K if you're being cool and using the original Quechua spelling. The name means golden enclosure, which sounds like the kind of place where you'd expect to find a really chill sun god sipping quinoa smoothies. The temple was dedicated to Inti, the Inca sun deity and top-tier celestial influencer. Before the Spanish came along and changed the world, Coricancha was the religious and political heart of the Inca Empire from 1400 to about 1532. Walls, floors, even the garden were all plated in gold. Real plants were replaced with golden replicas of corn stalks and animals. When I say the Inca had gold, I mean they had gold up the wazoo. Every baby born in Spain is still given a little tiny nugget of Inca gold as tradition. Just kidding. But seriously, the Inca loved gold and the Spanish loved taking it. And they spent it all on warships and weapons and whatever because it's gone now. Anywho, the architecture of Coricancha was next level. The stones were carved with such surgical precision that modern engineers still wonder how. No mortar was used, just perfectly interlocked blocks of andesite. So seamless, you can't slip a sheet of paper between them. Okay, maybe there's a crack or two, but if you try to stick your credit card in there, it's gone. It lives in the walls now. Now let's hop on an imaginary llama-powered time jet to Egypt. I think we'll land at the Valley Temple next to the Sphinx in the year 2532 BC. Pharaoh Khafre just died, his body allegedly entombed within the Great Pyramid. There was his pyramid, the Sphinx, and the Valley Temple all in a neat little row. Just like Coricancha, the Valley Temple's limestone blocks are fitted so precisely, even your handyman uncle with a laser level would be impressed. And these aren't your average garden variety boulders. Some of the stones weigh 200 tons. How do you suppose such monstrous rocks were cut and transported without at least some sort of advanced technology? It's not just the advanced engineering that connects the temples. The architectural overlap between the two is bananas. It's like both cultures were working off the same blueprint. Why do these building styles show up in civilizations that are not connected? Some researchers say it's a matter of convergent engineering, like convergent evolution. For example, how birds and bats both evolved to have wings. You take a universal problem, like how to build a strong temple, and humans, being the clever monkeys we are, come up with similar solutions no matter where or when, and we end up getting a similar result. So for example, take two guys on the opposite sides of the world, Peru and Egypt. They both want to build a temple. Even though they've never met, they build similar structures because of convergent engineering. They both figure out the same solution to their problem, constructing nearly identical temples. It's not that they were influenced by aliens, it's more that the construction techniques that they used were the most practical. That's one theory to explain the similarities, but not everyone is buying it. The thing about this architectural style is that it's not just Peru and Egypt, it's everywhere. There are examples in Japan, Bolivia, Easter Island, Turkey. You can find almost identical temples all over the world. It's not even the how that has experts scratching their heads, it's the motive. Why go through all the trouble of dragging 200-ton rocks uphill just to make a temple wall that fits together tighter than your jeans after taco night? I'll be looking for your answer to this mystery in the comments. Drombeg Stone Circle. Where do ancient rituals, cosmic alignments, and Irish weather all meet for a pint of Guinness? At the Drombeg Stone Circle, of course. In West Cork, nestled among sheep-speckled hills and postcard-perfect green fields, sits a Bronze Age site so mystical it practically demands you wear a cloak and whisper the word solstice every 5 minutes. Nicknamed the Druid's Altar, Drombeg isn't just a bunch of rocks in a field. It's Ireland's version of Stonehenge, but with better views, fewer tourists, and a slightly higher chance of rain. Other than being a great backdrop for your moody Instagram shoot, Drombeg is a 3,000-year-old mystery. It features 17 stones in a neat little circle. The whole setup aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunset. If you're a fan of pretty lights at dusk, this is the place to come on the shortest day of the year. The celestial connection shows just how well the ancients blended astronomy and engineering, while keeping their link to the natural and supernatural world. When you see the sun beaming through the portal on the solstice, it fills your heart with magic. That energy can't be a coincidence. Archaeologists have even found cremated human remains and pottery fragments at the site, which suggests ceremonial activity. But to be entirely honest, the origin, history, and purpose of Drombeg is still up for debate. Whether it was a solar calendar, a ritual site, or the hottest prehistoric hangout in West Cork, Drombeg is a fantastic example of Bronze Age architecture. And it's not alone. Nearby, you have ancient monuments like Knocknaquilla and Glanworth, because once you've started chasing ancient stones, it becomes a lifestyle. Maybe you want to consider a little trip to Ireland to investigate these enigmas of the past and the lost world they hide. And let me know when you go so I can join. Lost Cities of the Silk Road. You think your hike was intense last weekend? Try trekking into the Uzbek mountains and accidentally discovering a forgotten medieval city buried under someone's backyard. No joke, that actually happened. Welcome to Tugun Bulak and Tashbulak, the Silk Road cities nobody told you about because until now, nobody really knew they were there. And I don't know if their names were that catchy. For centuries, historians thought the Silk Road was just a dusty trade route connecting big-name desert cities. But it turns out ancient merchants had a thing for altitude, cold air, and brutal uphill climbs. Who knew? These remote cities were part of the Silk Road, but so small, history forgot them. Here's how this high-altitude archaeology bombshell went down. In one corner, you've got Farhad Maksudov, director of Uzbekistan's National Center of Archaeology. In the other corner, you've got Michael Fracchetti from Washington University in St. Louis. Together, they are the archaeological crossover you didn't know you needed. Armed with LiDAR, a remote sensing technology that shoots lasers from drones to scan terrain like a giant 3D scanner, Farhad and Michael uncovered Tugunbulak, a sprawling mountaintop metropolis over 6,000 feet above sea level. That's higher than 97% of where humans choose to live today. It's like building a city on top of a Stairmaster. The most amazing part is that it all started with a local official finding some weird ceramics in their backyard. The team went to check it out, and surprise! His house was built on a medieval citadel. Does that mean the rent goes up? The team first stumbled across Tashbulak in 2011. Then came Tugunbulak, a city the size of Vatican City, built on top of mountains, surrounded by fortifications, kilns, and evidence of industrial-scale iron smelting. For some reason I can't fathom, medieval people in Uzbekistan looked at a treacherous mountain and said, "Let's build a factory here." It might seem foolish to us, but they had a good reason for building way up in the clouds. That reason can be summed up in 2 words: iron smelting. The mountains were rich in ore, and they needed strong, reliable fires to process it. Processing the iron ore in the mountains is genius because the wind hits like a free forge blower. These guys were working smarter, not harder, before it was a slogan. Alas, what these forge masters had not anticipated was their own destruction. Processing all of this iron meant they needed fuel, which meant cutting down forests, which led to floods, avalanches, and ecological chaos. They traded trees for power and got disaster instead. Insert your own climate change parallel here. This discovery is blowing everyone's minds. It's a whole factory/city/civilization living higher in the mountains than anyone thought possible. Almost every other Silk Road city has been found in a valley or lowland. Logical places to build cities, so this is all very cool. Would you be up for life in the clouds, or do you prefer to live at sea level where you won't get blown away by a gust of wind or crushed by an avalanche? A secret cave full of ancient bling, deep in the piney wilds of southern Mexico, beneath a mountain that looks like it's been guarding secrets since the dinosaurs, a cave just spilled its gut. And what do you suppose came out? Pre-Hispanic artifacts left by a now extinct group of humans scientists barely knew existed. It's the historical equivalent of opening your grandma's attic and finding a stash of Renaissance art, a time machine, and a couple of cursed amulets. And before you ask, no, this has nothing to do with the Maya. This is Tlayococ Cave, and things are about to get weird. Russian speleologist Yekaterina Pavlova and local cave guide Adrian Beltran Dimas went spelunking in Guerrero's mountains. They found a secret chamber straight out of a National Treasure sequel. Underwater passage? Check. Hidden chamber? Check. Mysterious artifacts no one's seen in hundreds of years? Double check. The Mexican National Institute of Anthropology and History heard of the discovery and promptly rolled in with their clipboards and headlamps. What they confirmed will make your inner history buff do a backflip. They found shell bracelets perched on top of stalagmites and weird black stone discs that looked like they came from a prehistoric DJ set. And did I mention that some of the stalagmites were carved into spheres? Someone down there had time, tools, and a vision. What that vision was, I can't even begin to picture it. The artifacts in the cave belong to the Tlacotepehuan people. Never heard of them? You're not alone. They're like that indie band your friend swears is amazing, but you can't find on Spotify. Historians estimate the objects were placed during the post-classic period of 950 to 1521 AD. Post-classic is a really lame label for the Middle Ages that scientists are trying to make catch on. Sort of like fetch. It's just probably not gonna happen. Anyway, the post-classic period was when Europe was dealing with knights and plagues. But in Mexico, the Tlacotepehuan were in caves crafting shell bracelets engraved with funky see S-shaped patterns and tiny little faces that may or may not be prehistoric emojis. According to archaeologist Miguel Perez, this cave was sacred. Underworld meets womb of the earth sacred. Fertility, creation, cosmic energies. This dark underground place was dripping with meaning that no modern historian can put into words. Seeing as the Tlacotepehuan have been extinct for centuries, there's no one to ask. All the experts can do is look at the strange treasures in the cozy cave and speculate. What were their thoughts, their dreams, their beliefs? Is the Garden of Eden underneath the pyramid? If there's one thing nobody was expecting to find underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza, it was the Garden of Eden. Yet here we are. Welcome to the carnival. Some people go to Egypt to see the pyramids, and others go to find the meaning of life, or at least get a camel selfie. But Dr. Konstantin Borisov, a computer engineer with a flair for biblical reinterpretation, goes to Egypt to change history. Dr. Borisov has suggested that the Garden of Eden is buried beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. The original paradise, complete with forbidden fruit and dress code violations, might be hiding under 6 million tons of limestone. Let me retrace my steps a bit here. For centuries, Eden's location has been pinned to somewhere in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. In the book of Genesis, the Garden of Eden is said to be somewhere near 4 major rivers. The issue is that no one knows where the Pishon and Gihon rivers are. They're a total mystery. But not to Dr. Borisov, who believes them to be located in Egypt. One of Borisov's key pieces of evidence is the Hereford Mappa Mundi, a delightfully bonkers medieval map that says 4 rivers, Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, and Indus, flow from a mythical ocean that wraps around the earth like a divine hug. It's true that the Nile and the Indus rivers aren't mentioned in Genesis, but Borisov thinks the Nile is the Gihon and the Pishon is the Indus. Tired of rivers yet? The point is that Eden could be in Egypt. It's just that names have gotten confused over, all of human existence. These things happen. Borisov believes that the Great Pyramid wasn't a royal tomb or an alien Wi-Fi router, but an architectural metaphor for Eden's tree of life, as in the shiny one with the no touchy fruit on it. He believes the pyramid was built over the ruins of the original Garden of Eden as a way to memorialize the tree of life that once stood there. What an amazingly unique idea! I'm used to people saying the pyramids are actually giant batteries, or that the pyramid was built to block the entrance to a lost Atlantean library known as the Hall of Records. But to think the pyramid could be covering the Garden of Eden? Let me know what you think of this theory, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Welsh Labyrinths. In the sheep-dotted, weather-whipped highlands of Wales, ancient shepherds weren't just counting their flock. They were building mind-bending mazes that dwarfed even the Minotaur's infamous lair. These weren't your garden-variety puzzles. They were enormous ritualistic landscapes carved into the very skin of the earth. And there's one you can see for yourself with your own 2 eyes. These old mazes are known as kerdroia. They were usually shaped in the 7-fold Cretan design, the same one that once gave the Minotaur in Greek mythology his own stress-inducing trap from hell. Basically, the Welsh copied the original Greek design for complex maze creation. You might be picturing that huge hedge maze from The Shining, but kerdroia aren't like that. They were more like shrub labyrinths, more 2D than 3D, with massive paths twisting and turning through the open forest. People would perform ritual dances as they made their way through the maze. But they weren't trapped between hulking walls of foliage like in the movies. In fact, historians aren't positive they know what was going on inside these mazes. Whatever happened, be it worship, celebration, or maybe a sheep-themed dance-off, it's now a historical shrug. What I can tell you is that the center of each kerdroia was a twin path, which sounds a little like a sneeze but is actually a little hillock. Welsh folk dances are still called this today. That's how popular these forgotten rituals were centuries ago, back when paganism was still a direct competitor with Christianity. Now here's where it gets spicy. You'd expect to find these mazes just in Wales, right? Wrong. Historian Mario Zaccardi went full maze hunter mode and discovered one in Petrella Tifernina, Italy. It's the only known kerdroia in the Mediterranean. It's like finding a Welsh teapot in the middle of the Sahara. Why is it there? Who made it? Was it an ancient tourist from Cardiff who took the scenic route and got really homesick? Nobody knows, but the mystery makes it feel like an archaeological Easter egg. You can see the ruins of the Great Maze in Italy, or you can go to Wales and see what's believed to be the biggest kerdroia in the world. Only there's one issue. It isn't ancient. In 2005, a bunch of brilliant, possibly labyrinth-obsessed pals came together and said, let's build a forest maze. And they did. They built it up in Gwydir Forest, towering above the Conwy Valley. 1 mile of twisty, turny paths later, they had possibly the largest turf labyrinth in the world. It's been a performance venue ever since, hosting theater, dance, and confusing more than one hiker. My favorite part of this new maze is that it's growing. Since it was built, the low conifers lining the paths have grown taller. As the years go by, wandering this labyrinth becomes more like wandering through a magical green corn maze built by druids and drama students. Getting lost here doesn't sound so bad, does it? Maybe the ghosts of some Welsh warriors will appear to freak you out. A lost African city found with lasers. You know how people are always saying stuff like, there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah, well, tell that to the giant lost city hiding just outside Johannesburg that scientists only now rediscovered thanks to lasers. Meet Queneng, the 500-year-old Tswana metropolis that ghosted history for centuries, until now. Buried beneath thick vegetation and even thicker neglect, this city's been hiding in plain sight. All it took to find it was LiDAR, which is essentially laser vision for archaeologists. Take that, Superman! Queneng isn't just some dusty collection of rocks. It was a mighty city with more than 750 stone homesteads spread across nearly 5 miles. For comparison, ancient Ur of Mesopotamian fame was a baby at less than a mile wide. Believe it or not, Queneng was occupied until as recently as the 1820s. There were multiple Tswana settlements that were wiped out as part of what's known as the Difikane Civil Wars. Since many hadn't even been documented, their destruction left them as ghosts, lost to the records and to the African dust. Fast forward to the 21st century, Karim Sader, professor at the University of the Witwatersrand, rolled up with LiDAR. He used lasers to scan the rural area outside Johannesburg. Lo and behold, a ghost city appeared in the data. Stone walls, roads, passageways, cattle drives, all the usual signs of a sophisticated urban sprawl were hidden in the open. At the entrances to some of these major homesteads, researchers found giant mounds of ash, bones, and broken pottery. They seem to be the leftovers of ancient Tswana block parties. Here's a cool bit of culture for you. These mounds of what look like trash were really monuments to wealth and hospitality. In the world of the Tswana, the size of your dump, as in trash dump, equaled the size of your importance. The more garbage in front of your homestead, the wealthier you were. And then there are the stone towers. Short, thick, and everywhere, these mysterious structures are confusing researchers. Were they grain bins, burial markers, cattle-themed disco balls? The wealthier homes had more of them, so they must have been tied to money and power. There's still a ton of work to do in the ruins of Queneng. Archaeologists have only brushed aside the dust on the surface of a hidden world that could change how we view medieval African kingdoms. Doggerland, Europe's real Atlantis. Once upon a time, before Rome, before TikTok, there was Doggerland, a lush, green, very real land that now lies completely underwater between Great Britain and mainland Europe. Think of it as Europe's forgotten middle child. Once thriving, now submerged and totally underrated. I wish I could say Doggerland was a mythical lost world ruled by fish people or ancient alien kings, but that would be pushing the truth a little. In reality, it was filled with real, live Mesolithic humans who lived their best hunter-gatherer lives. They fished, foraged, and snacked on berries. Then their whole world was swept into the sea. It happened, a little coincidentally may I add, at the same time a certain biblical flood is said to have been unleashed upon humanity. That was about 12,000 years ago, at the tail end of the last ice age. Before the calamity, the North Sea as we know it now wasn't a sea at all. It was a sprawling stretch of land with gently rolling hills, marshes, dense woodlands, and lagoons. If you were a Mesolithic nomad with a love for hiking and hazelnuts, Doggerland was your dream neighborhood. People roamed this place, fished its rivers, left behind tools, footprints, and probably had intense campfire debates about which mushrooms were safe to eat. This fantastic fairy tale landscape connected Britain to what is now France, the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. It was Europe's original freeway. Then the water came. Doggerland's downfall was global warming. As Earth thawed from its icy tantrum, glaciers melted, sea levels rose, and Doggerland started shrinking like your favorite wool sweater in a dryer. Then, about 8,200 years ago, a combo move of glacial lake meltdown and a massive undersea landslide off the coast of Norway tsunamied Doggerland off the map. In an instant, Britain became an island. All of the people living in Doggerland, let's call them Doggerlanders, either moved to higher ground or learned the hard way that coastal property can be a real liability. You might be wondering how anyone could possibly know all of this. It's quite a surprise. Archaeologists only know about Doggerland's complex history thanks to seismic data from oil companies. The same people drilling for fossil fuel gold also helped researchers reconstruct a digital map of prehistoric Europe. With all the fancy tech, scientists recreated over 18,000 square miles of Doggerland's ancient landscape. That's bigger than Denmark. It's bigger than 250 million football fields. But mapping it is only one part of the journey. Fishermen in the North Sea frequently reel in ancient bones and tools like ghostly remnants from the Stone Age. It's as if Europe was flooded, and 10,000 years later, fishermen started pulling up the bricks of broken cathedrals. Doggerland might be gone, but its soggy, cautionary tale is more relevant today than ever. Its Mesolithic residents were forced out by climate change. Rising seas erased their world, and today millions live along the edges of what used to be Doggerland. Billions more live near coastlines, and it just so happens our polar ice caps aren't looking too stable. See a pattern? Doggerland is a tale or a warning, a hidden world under the sea that should be interpreted as a possible warning of what's to come for us.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Hidden desert tombs. Archaeologists in Iran recently came across a lost burial mound in Tepe Nakarechi. They had been searching for a place called the Seleucid Laodicea Temple underneath the town of Navahand. Instead of finding the ruins of the temple, they came across a hollow burial mound where a high-ranking individual was buried thousands of years ago. They just don't know who because nobody was found inside the tomb. The town of Navahand may look like any ordinary Iranian town today, but it was much more impressive and spectacular about 2,300 years ago. It was a major town during the reign of King Antiochus III of the Seleucid Empire in the 3rd century BC. He ruled over Syria and Iran, which at the time were all part of the Greek state called Seleucid. Back in 1943, archaeologists doing excavations here discovered a huge inscription with 30 lines of ancient Greek. The inscription was calling for the people of the city to obey all the laws of the new Hellenistic government. The inscription also mentioned the existence of the Laodicea Temple built by King Antiochus for his wife, Queen Laodicea. However, this mysterious temple remains lost to this very day because no archaeologist has ever been able to find it. And when researchers tried to find it recently, they ended up discovering an empty burial mound with nobody inside. Demon traps. Sardis is an extremely old city in Turkey, going back thousands of years. It's most famous because in the year 17 AD, the entire ancient city was devastated by a horrifying earthquake. The earthquake struck in the middle of the night, tore down all the buildings in the city, and it took them years to rebuild. When they did rebuild, they used charms and magic seals to prevent an earthquake from ever destroying their great city again. About a decade ago, in 2013, archaeologists were excavating some of these ancient buildings in Sardis. Specifically, they were looking at buildings that had been put back together following the earthquake. What they discovered were strange containers holding a variety of bizarre items. Each clay container had inside of it bronze tools, at least one eggshell, and a single coin. These peculiar objects would have been used 2,000 years ago in ancient rituals, specifically rituals to keep evil forces at bay. Archaeologists say this is a rare example of just how psychologically damaged the people in the city were who experienced the earthquake. They were so terrified that they created demon traps and then buried them under the foundations of their homes, hoping to catch any wicked entities before they could cause harm. According to archaeologist Elizabeth Raubold, the citizens of Sardis were burying strange things underneath their floors even before the earthquake. For example, archaeologists have found jars with puppy skeletons inside. It shows just how paranoid the Romans were and how obsessed they were with curses and spells. The Lost Pyramid of Noah's Ark. A fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls has revealed something rather shocking. It turns out that Noah's Ark may not have been what we all think it was. The ancient text, which dates back 2,000 years, could be proof that Noah's Ark was actually a pyramid. Here's a quick recap of the Dead Sea Scrolls. 50 years ago, a Bedouin shepherd in Israel accidentally discovered a cave filled with ancient scrolls near the Dead Sea. They became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of about 800 manuscripts. Around 200 of those manuscripts are bits and pieces from the Hebrew Bible. Just recently, the Israel Antiquities Authority scanned tens of thousands of tiny fragments of the scrolls using a special camera. Each fragment was photographed 28 times and in different light wavelengths. All this fancy photography has allowed researchers to decipher texts that had been previously illegible. One of these new texts, according to researcher Dr. Alexei Yuditsky, describes Noah's Ark as having its ribs gathered at a point at the top to form the shape of a pyramid. This is interesting because it's not the only historical mention of the Ark being a pyramid. A Greek translation of the Bible from the 3rd century described the Ark as pyramid-shaped, while medieval authors even said the Ark's roof was pointed. This has led some to speculate that the Ark may have actually been a pyramid, and that it could still be hiding somewhere in the ancient world, possibly in Egypt or Turkey. We just don't know where, or if the rumor is even true. Lost Hellenistic City. Basania was a city in the Illyrian kingdom that would ultimately be captured by Rome and subdued under their control. Historians have always known about the city because it was described in Roman texts 2,000 years ago by the Roman historian Livius. He wrote that Basania was where the Illyrians took one of their final stands against the Roman army, even though they fell anyway. But it wasn't until 2018 that this lost city was finally discovered. It was researchers from the University of Warsaw who first identified the massive defensive walls of Basania. The walls were found on a forested hill near the city of Shkodra in Albania. Before researchers came, the locals had always assumed the stones were natural formations. They were actually the walls of a massive city that once dominated the region. Once archaeologists started digging, they found all kinds of things. They found a gatehouse, a pair of bastions, and the remains of the entire settlement. Based on where it was discovered, Basania was sandwiched between two of the most important centers in Illyria. It was between Shkodër, the Illyrian capital, and the major Greek city of Lissos. While the city isn't that extraordinary, especially since the whole thing has been leveled by time and neglect, it does have a deep history. During excavations, ancient fragments of pottery dating back over 4,000 years were found. That means that people lived here all the way from around 2000 BC until the Illyrians were defeated in the 2nd century BC. And now for number 6. But first, I wanted to give a big shout out to Mary Cook and Dar Golds. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. The Lost Cities of the Amazon. A most fantastic discovery of lost cities has just been made in South America. Scientists in Bolivia have discovered evidence of sophisticated cultures living deep in the Amazon. They used highly sophisticated mapping technology to pierce the jungle canopy and map the floor. What they discovered was evidence of an ancient urban sprawl hidden in the wilderness. This isn't the lost city of Z or El Dorado. Instead, scientists identified multiple settlements making up a larger community of people, all connected by roads and byways. It's a kind of urban stronghold and socially complex center that was most likely occupied by the Kasarabe culture from between 500 and 1400 AD. These settlements had pyramids, great temple compounds for ritual activities, and even water distribution systems that stretched for miles across the landscape. These systems delivered fresh water to people in these smaller, more rural settlements. This is pretty amazing because it shows that at least in Bolivia, the Amazon was hardly just a wild place. Instead, the native inhabitants had carved their own world out of the jungle and changed the landscape to suit their needs. The only thing is that these settlements were abandoned abruptly about 600 years ago, even before the Spanish showed up. Right now, nobody has any idea why. The altar on Mount Ebal. In the book of Joshua, which can be found in the Bible, There is a story about how he built a great altar of stones where the Israelites went to make peace offerings. As it turns out, that altar may have been a real place, because in the 1980s, archaeologist Adam Zertal conducted a land survey around Mount Ebal and discovered an anomaly about 450 feet beneath the peak. That anomaly proved to be the remains of an ancient altar. The mountain was excavated in the 1980s, and the full scope of the altar was uncovered. Somebody had built a massive offering table from unhewn stones, way back in the Iron Age. The base was built right into the bedrock, with a depression in the middle where the researchers found charred animal bones and ash. These bones were almost definitely from sacrifices. In total, the monumental altar was about 30 feet long, standing over 10 feet tall, and with a huge ramp leading to it up the mountainside. Nobody knows who built the altar for sure, but it does seem connected to the story of Joshua in the Bible. It could very well have been the actual altar built by Joshua. Offerings of the Templo Mayor. Thousands of strange and somewhat creepy wooden objects have been discovered inside the ancient Templo Mayor of the Aztec. The Templo Mayor is at the very heart of the ancient Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. The city is currently half buried underneath the modern structures of Mexico City, pretty much paved over by the Spanish. However, there are some pieces still remaining. The Templo Mayor is one of them, although it's broken and in seriously rough shape. Construction on the temple began around the year 1325. Less than 200 years later, in 1521, it was absolutely destroyed by the Spanish. The modern archaeological site can be found right in the main plaza of Mexico City, at the core of the historical district. In the Nahuatl language, the temple is called Hueyteocalli, and it was dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war, and Tlaloc, the Aztec god of rain and agriculture. Researchers have uncovered over 2,500 wooden objects from underneath the ruined temple. Things like disturbing ceremonial masks, headdresses, scepters, figurines, earrings, and a bunch of other amazing artifacts. These things had likely been dumped in the bowels of the temple by Aztec priests as offerings to the gods. The only reason the wooden objects have survived for so long is the incredible humidity underground and the condition of the soil. A mysterious burial site at Kelenderis. At the ancient city of Kelenderis, located on the Mediterranean coast of Turkey, archaeologists have uncovered a lost infant burial site. Not just that, but also a furnace that had been used for commercial production. The port city of Kelenderis was established roughly 2,800 years ago. It's believed it was occupied by the Phoenicians first around the 8th century BC, then the Samans. It was eventually taken over by Rome around the 1st century. They invested heavily in infrastructure, and the Byzantines took over until it was captured by the Armenians in the 11th century, and then captured by the Turks in the 13th century, and it has remained with the Turks ever since. Excavations have been going on since 1987, and every year there are more and more discoveries. Over 150 tombs have been found thus far, and yet none of the tombs contained burial gifts. None except for the newly discovered infant burial site, which was positively bursting with artifacts. Researchers uncovered glass bracelets, inscribed ceramics, and much more. Even stranger is that the infants were all buried around a central child's grave, and researchers don't know why. The other interesting discovery at this little-known piece of lost Rome is the furnace. Researchers say it's about 1,300 years old and was used specifically for producing roof tiles. The lost city under the Grand Canyon. There might just be a lost city hiding underneath the Grand Canyon. 1,486 feet down the canyon wall, there is supposedly a cave opening which leads down into the city. However, legend has it that there are no other ways into the city, only the single entrance hidden somewhere on one of the canyon walls, perhaps even already caved in and invisible, thereby sealing the city from daylight forever. This may sound like total nonsense, but there is evidence of such a thing dating all the way back to the early 20th century. There is an article in the Arizona Gazette dated April 1909 in which a man named G.E. Kincaid supposedly discovered the very entrance to the city under the Grand Canyon. He had been traveling the Colorado River by boat looking for minerals when he accidentally found the entrance leading to the subterranean cave. What he found inside is unbelievable. He described huge granaries, storehouses made from hard cement, dining halls, gray metal that looked like platinum, and a network of tunnels leading deeper into the earth. The place was so big it could have housed at least 50,000 people, and there were weird carvings on the walls that looked an awful lot like hieroglyphics. Some experts have suggested the city was built by the Egyptians, but that's hard to believe. In reality, if this underground city does exist, it was probably occupied by a Native American group. Mysterious Ethiopian Church. In the dry and dusty highlands of Ethiopia, a team of archaeologists have uncovered the oldest Christian church anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa. This discovery is shining light on one of the world's first Christian kingdoms, and also one of its most mysterious. The team of international scientists found the church about 30 miles from Aksum, a modern city, but also once the ancient capital of the Aksumite Empire. This empire appeared around the 1st century AD and dominated most of Eastern Africa and even Western Arabia. The church was dated back to the 4th century AD, 300 years after Christ's supposed death and resurrection. While that may seem like a long time, it was about how long it took for Christianity to catch on. It was in the 4th century when Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity for the first time, then converted to a Christian on his deathbed in the year 337. The presence of this church shows that Christianity arrived in Ethiopia and took hold before the rest of the world. Even when the Aksumite kingdom began to lose its power in the 8th century, and as Islam spread across the entire region and took over pretty much everywhere, they remained defiantly Christian. Ethiopia managed to stay Christian even in the 16th century, when the Somali and Ottoman armies tried to take the highlands. And today, most Ethiopians still belong to the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Thanks for watching! Which of these mysterious ancient places would you love to see with your own eyes? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!